Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. You got mail from me, Bella, and this week we are discussing the seasonal slump. Because if you haven't noticed, this week hasn't been the most fun, and I haven't been very active on socials, and I found this week really hard. I found this week really tough, and I feel like we should chat about it, because this period into winter can kind of be a period that I dread, and I don't want this for us this year, because this year I read Winter, and I kind of read it at the wrong time of the year. I read it in like January, February. But it has set me up and reminded me how important this period of stillness actually is. And so this is why we have to talk about it on this week's podcast episode, because so many people related to the "you've kind of lost your spark, how to find your spark" episode. And I think when you've gone through that, going through this period of stillness where you kind of don't feel like you found your spark can feel really daunting, because you worry like, well, have I lost it again? Is that my spark gone? Like, is this that? And it's not that. It's different. And this is why we have to chat about it. But first things first, if you are new to the podcast, welcome to the You've Got Mail family. I'm so excited that you're here and that we can chat today and that we can catch up. Whether you found me from social media or through Spotify or Apple Podcasts, welcome. I really hope you stick around. If you are a returning listener, you know how much I love you. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And please carry on messaging me and commenting on the podcast, because yesterday, or like a couple of days ago, someone commented that they listened to the podcast from Brazil. And I think this is the thing, when you record and create content and produce podcasts and this, you kind of feels like you're putting it out into the void, not in an awful way, in like if you had an art gallery and people coming around, you get to discuss your work, you have those people you have those personal interactions and you think, okay, yeah, what I'm doing, real life, it feels like real life. Whereas when you just like post it into a void, and then sometimes you don't get feedback, sometimes you do get feedback, it's really hit and miss. Sometimes that can feel a bit strange. And you can kind of, I think especially when we're struggling with the seasonal slump, it can be really easy to become very unmotivated. And so reading your comments and seeing how much you guys like enjoyed the last couple of podcast episodes has been really, like, it's made me feel really happy. And so thank you. Thank you for getting in touch and for messaging me. One person messaged that they were an only child and that the podcast really does make them feel like they have a big sister. And no joke, it made my day. It's actually made my week. I've thought about it multiple times. Me and my podcast manager literally discussed it this morning. And so, if that was you, just know you have made my week. I've been trying to be proactive with organising social plans, because I have a tendency in winter to definitely not be as proactive as I should and get very content in my own little bubble. And it's so easily done. Like, it is so easily done. You just find your TV show and you make dinner, you go to bed, and like that's your evening over. But this week I've made sure to make a couple of evening plans, because I'll be honest, I was feeling like a bit lonely, not in like a proper lonely way, but just like I hadn't been proactive in making plans with my friends, and life just got busy, and then I didn't make plans for a couple of weeks, and I thought, actually, I need to start doing that. So I've set myself a little task of like, just organise something with one friend a week. One friend. That's all you need to do. Just do one thing a week and start from there, because, you know, I am feeling a little bit anxious at the moment, and when I am feeling a bit anxious, tend to like not be super proactive in making plans. I tend to just think I just need to hibernate, like that I need to lean in. And we'll come on to that, like you sometimes do need to lean in, but I know that that is a bad habit that I get into. And so I'm trying to ward against it, trying to be proactive, and we are making plans in the week. Okay, because now I go to the gym in the mornings, like otherwise I just come back and I just watch TV and eat dinner and go to bed. And not that that's a bad thing, but there's definitely time for a little bit of a social event, at least one day of those weeks, at least one day of the week, you know? There's definitely time for that. Other news is I went out for Halloween. Because I'm not hungover that often, I really leant into it. I got a Chinese, I watched films all day, I napped, and it was actually really nice. And then on the back foot of that, I've been really ill this week. And so kind of learned my lesson of going out in winter. You are going to catch a cold, because everyone in a club together, multiple people coughing, it's just like a super spreader. And so that was the only slight negative, is that not only did I then feel super tired on the Sunday from going out on the Saturday night, I was ill, and I have been ill for the rest of the week. But it was really fun, and I think it's made me just to be a bit more like, you've got to find the balance, because we want to live this like healthy lifestyle and make sure I'm rested and make sure like, because when I'm anxious, when I'm overthinking, one of the big things that makes me more like that is not sleeping enough, is not having a good routine, is not kind of prioritizing the things that make me feel better. But there's a fine line, because sometimes I worry like I've turned into this, like, am I just too boring? am I just being boring? Is this just a boring era of my life? Is that bad? Should I like change that? And I think it's more about not this boring era is bad, but allowing myself to have balance and not thinking I have to stick to it too stringently or strictly, because these are my 20s and I want to go out and have fun and I want to go out with my friends, and it was like a great night. Like I had such a good time. The music was brilliant. And I think all of these things, I don't want to miss out on those memories just because I'm so worried about how like the knock-on effect, because, you know, I do really want to do those things still. And so for me, it's been more about finding a balance. And I think that's been good. I've realized I don't want to be as strictly like I'm never drinking, but I also do value the balance that not drinking gives me in my life. And I think that's been the kind of difference in the last couple of months, because finding that balance is kind of tricky when everything in the UK socializing is centered around booze and drinking. It is, especially around winter. Like, you're not going to go for a coffee at like 6. You're not going to do that. But equally, you can't just go for a walk. You can't just go and get, and like, you know, it is tricky. And so leaning into that and realizing that I am allowed to do that, but I can also still do that. They're not mutually exclusive. That has been a really important thing for me. But anyway, let's go on to the content part of this week's podcast episode. And as I said, this week we are discussing the seasonal slump, because this week has been not the most fun week. This week has been one of those weeks where I've just filled with anxiety and nervousness and overthinking every single thing in my life. And I've also felt really unmotivated, and I felt a bit guilty about it. I felt guilty that I felt like I wasn't doing as well on social media as I should be. I wasn't producing as much content as I should be. I wasn't interacting with everyone as much as I should be. Everything about what I was doing felt not enough in every single aspect of my life. And I started to realize, like I said in this week's Substack, I was like, I feel like I'm playing seasonal slump bingo. And I've just shouted bingo because I was like, I didn't really want to chat to loads of people. I didn't want to make plans. I felt really anxious. I found myself wanting to cancel plans. I didn't, and I'm really glad I didn't, because I had a really lovely time in those plans and they really helped me not feel super anxious. But I did feel anxious, and that is what I wanted to do. And I know that's not cool to admit, but it's true. Like, mentally, I just didn't feel that great. I felt anxious. I felt overwhelmed. I felt really unsure of what I was doing, unmotivated, and also I felt really bored. Really bored. I have found my routine boring, but then flip side, all I've wanted to do is watch TV. All I've wanted to do is watch TV. I've got a cold, I felt ill, and all of these just like negative vibes were circling me, and I thought, this isn't how it's meant to be. This isn't the ray of sunshine we're trying to be. This isn't a fun vibe, and I don't know why I've lent into this week, but I have lent into this week. And I wanted to chat about it because I see so many people being like, this is going to be my winter arc. This is the time to like keep going and like really push yourself and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not that. But I'm kind of saying that we have to have periods where we are slower, and we have to have these periods of rest. Because the thing is, the way I think about it, the way the year works in my mind is that like spring is you reaching the top of the roller coaster. Okay, you're out to beach there, you're about to beach there. Summer is the free fall. It's so exciting and there's so much going on and it feels so freeing and it just feels brilliant. It feels so like everything is so much fun and there feels so much opportunity and chance to do big things in the world. It's like, woo, going so great, woo. And then I was going to do this. And then we hit autumn and it kind of just levels out a bit. And then we're at winter. Okay. And it is just flat and steady and boring and you're just being pulled along. And you kind of have this knowledge that the ride's over, that you're reaching the end of it, that like kind of that was it, and that you don't have the excitement yet of what's to come because that's spring. That's coming. You're not there yet. And it's really hard and it is boring. And I think the first thing to say about this is like, no wonder we all get a little bit low in winter. It is boring. It's a cost of living crisis means we can't afford to do things all the time. We can't afford to do things all the time, right? But all of the activities in winter cost money because you can't just go for a walk because it's dark outside. You can't go for a run anymore because it doesn't feel safe. You can't do so many things that in summer you can do, and that makes it feel so much lonelier, so much more isolating. And then you start becoming those things, and then it's hard to kind of break that cycle because, trust me, When I'm feeling anxious and lonely, I know it's counterintuitive, but I just don't want to reach out either because I'm like, it's going to make me feel worse. It never makes me feel worse. But in that moment, it does. I'm like, it will make me feel worse. I should just stay here on my own. I promise I'll feel better. I don't feel better, but I think that way. And this is the issue with winter, because not only do you have that kind of, well, this is a boring routine, just going to the gym in the morning, going to work, coming home, watching, like, that is boring. There's also the recognition that, like, the year is over. The year has passed, okay? The year has happened. And all of a sudden, this pressure for all of the goals that we felt like we should achieve or we wanted to achieve or we were pushing ourselves to achieve, that ticking timer of how long we have to complete them is getting smaller and smaller, and the time is getting faster and faster, and it starts to feel so much more pressure is building on what the next 2 months of the year hold, which is ridiculous, okay? But it does feel that way. Because all of a sudden 2026 is going to be here, and it's like that's a bit too, why is that here? I don't feel quite ready to be 26 yet. I'm not quite in that era of my life yet. We're not edging towards the later 20s. That doesn't feel right, but that is right. And so not only does life feel more boring, it also feels like we've just had this massive high of excitement of everything going on and everything is flat. We also have the realization and kind of start putting more pressure on ourselves of things that we should have done, things that we have to do before the end of the year, things that we have to do to make it meanwhile. And so it's no wonder we feel the way we do. But that doesn't mean that we have to accept feeling the way we do. Because the thing about how our life works, and the thing that I've realized the older that I've got, is that in order to climb to the top of the roller coaster, we have to make sure we have enough energy. We have to make sure that we are rested and recuperated. We have to make sure that we've allowed ourselves time to recover, because free falling is fun, okay? Free falling is exciting and it's nerve-wracking and there's so much going on. You can kind of only focus on that. But when we're just steady along, it allows us to zoom out and think about everything else that is gone. It's like the planning stage of a project that isn't fun, that isn't boring, but isn't required. And just like the planning stage, this winter period of your life is kind of needed too. Because we're not robots, okay? We are not factories. We are not going to be able to run the same all of the time. We have to have moments of rest, of recuperation, of allowing ourselves to just be, of allowing ourselves to have a moment. And this is why I really, really need you to realize you're not going to be able to run at the same level of energy all of the time. You are going to have moments where you feel rested, where you don't do as much, where you spend more evenings on your own or just chilling out, where you allow yourself to recuperate and you kind of lean in to having this quieter time and you don't start seeing it in such a bad and negative way. Because you're not going to feel like some of you right now. And you know what? That's okay. Because we have to have these periods of downtime, these periods of, real reflection on how the year went in order to set us up for the year to come. Because if we carry on pushing ourselves and pushing ourselves and pushing ourselves, and if we carry on trying to make the maximum out of every single season of our life, we're going to burn ourselves out. Rest is important, recuperation is important, and allowing ourselves to have seasons where we focus on different things, where we have different values in the sense of we value more rest and recuperation, and in summer we're valuing spontaneity and plans and late nights and recognizing that each season has different values, but all of those values come together to create a life that is, as a circle, valuable, is really important. Because I used to hate winter and I used to dread it. But now I see how important this is as a season of my life for allowing me to reflect on what's been and decide what I want to come. Because if we don't have these periods of rest, these periods where we really properly think about who we are and who we want to be and are we happy, when we don't have these periods of boredom, because a big part of allowing ourselves to consider what is my life like and do I like it is being bored, your brain has to allow itself to slow down. Your brain has to stop running at 1,000 miles per hour. It has to give itself a moment. If we don't allow that, then we end up just rushing into decisions and lifestyles and lives that we don't really want. And so this is the thing. A lot of people coming into winter will recommend, join new clubs, start new hobbies, make sure you're proactive with friends, get as much into the sunshine as you can. Make sure you try and go for a walk at lunchtime. Make sure you don't just hibernate away. All of those things are important. I'm not discrediting those or discounting those. Those are things that I'm also going to try and do. Being proactive with my friends, making sure I go for a walk at lunchtime so I at least see sunlight. All of those things are valuable. But I think it's also recognizing that we have to lean into the season that we're in. Stop trying to resent it. Stop thinking it's so terrible and awful, and really recognize what this season of your life can bring you. Okay, maybe it's all right for you to have a bit more of a restful period. Maybe it's all right for you to have a bit more of a reflective period. Maybe it's more than all right. It's actually really important in making sure that you create foundations for the next year that are the foundations you want to create. That make sure that, the roller coaster that you ride next year is exactly the roller coaster that you've chosen. Because the thing is, even a flower has to lay its roots before it can bloom. And I think a lot about this season is our laying our roots season. Is the laying the tracks of the roller coaster, is working out who we want to be and how we could get there, but in a way that doesn't have so much pressure on it. It's giving ourselves time to have that moment, and realizing that moment and allowing ourselves to rest is really important. It's such a key part of that. And so many other cultures really value this period of rest, And I think that's especially, and that's really what the Wintering Book is about. It's about recognizing that, it's about recognizing that I think in all of us there is a seasonal element. And in order to have a season that we bloom, we have to have a season that we recuperate too. And so I know it's easy to resent this winter, okay? And I know it might feel like you're also playing seasonal slump bingo, okay? And I'm not saying that this feeling is great by any means. I know it's not. But I don't think we should resent it. I think we should try and think about, what does this season bring us? What does this season allow us to value that we can't value in other seasons? What can I gain from this right now? Because often we can gain more than we think. Often we can gain more than we realize. Often there is more to something than meets the eye. And so, yes, it's easy to think that right now watching more TV, resting, not doing as much is absolutely terrible. But you're not a robot. You're not a factory. And to think the outside environment isn't going to impact you is a bit silly, okay? You are a human being with emotions, with feelings, and you react to the outside world just as much as you react to your inside world, your mind, your headspace too. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, not that you ever needed someone to tell you, but if you needed someone to remind you, you're allowed to rest, okay? You're allowed to have this season where things calm down a little. You're allowed to have a season where you're a bit less productive. You're allowed to rest and recuperate and reflect on all that's been and really think about what's to come. You're more than allowed, actually. It's actually really important. And so I hope you allow yourself to do just that. I'm going to let myself do that. I'm going to stop putting so much pressure on myself. And I need to realize, in order to have these really great, incredible summers where I feel so filled with energy, I have to start filling my cup up now. And part of filling my cup up is recognizing that not everything has to be 100% all of the time. That we are humans. And part of that means recognizing that we're not factories, which is so tricky to say out loud, but it's so true. Because everyone's so productive and I feel like I should be girl bossing all the time, but I'm not. Okay, I just want to watch TV and eat popcorn at the moment. And I don't think that's the worst thing. But anyway, on to the question part of this week's podcast episode. And if you know someone who's going to enjoy this, please send it their way. And if you haven't already pressed follow, then what are you doing? Please press it. It takes literally 2 seconds. The final section of today's podcast. And this week we have the questions. If you don't already know, every kind of Thursday evening, if I remember, Friday morning when I forget, I post a little question box on my Instagram stories. And that's where people can send in their podcast questions. But I'm thinking of mixing it up. I want to have your guys' voices on the podcast too. And so I'm going to start putting a link to an app where you can send in your questions and you kind of voice record it like a voice memo, because I want you guys involved and I feel like it would be so much fun. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. I'm also going to tag that a few places. And so I'm hoping it will work. I'm hoping it will mean that you guys can just send in questions whenever you have them. And then I can just, pick a selection. But first question, what's your favorite thing to do for self-care? Right, this sounds stupid, okay? And I know this probably isn't the answer you think it's going to be. My favourite thing to do is to allow myself to do the things I'm already going to do, but with just way more time and no time pressure. Like, get ready without any, you have to get ready in 10 minutes. Without any intensity to it. Just, literally just getting ready and taking as long as I want to take and taking the pressure out of the everyday activities that I'm already doing. Because sometimes I don't feel like doing myself, I'm like, oh, all of these things are relaxing, but the thing I'd find most relaxing if I actually just makes a bit more of my everyday more relaxed. And that actually makes me feel better. Like, I love a slow getting ready. Do you know what? I think that's probably my favourite thing to do. It's brilliant. Advice on dealing with the winter blues. This perfect podcast episode for you. Honestly, we've spoken about it at length, but lean into the period of this life that this season allows you. Try and acknowledge the differences that this season can give you and realize that it's okay to have like differences and waves in your productivity. It's actually pretty normal. And I think trying to fight that and think we have to be the same all of the time puts too much pressure on ourselves and makes us feel anxious and goes into this cycle that we don't want to go into. And so I hope this podcast episode has helped, and I hope it's made you realize you're allowed to rest. Like, the winter blues happen, I think, because we try and stay up with how much we are doing in summer, but it's not sustainable. You know, we don't create a sustainable routine for ourselves because we don't realize that, you know, how much we're going to do is going to change, and that's okay. Final question. I'm currently on a gap year and have no idea what to do besides my thesis. Do you know what? I was going to suggest like traveling or working and like all of these different like things you could do. I would use this year to find out what really makes you happy. What do you really love in a job? What really matters to you? What gives you that purpose? And that feels like a big task, but I mean, like, follow the breadcrumbs that give you joy, okay? You know, you realize you really like chatting and connecting with people, so you start a podcast. That's what I did. Find the little things and start linking things up, because I wish I'd spent more time when I was younger focusing on finding the things that brought me joy. So when I then found a job that I wanted to do, I made sure it included those things, because I didn't do that. I just followed what I thought I should be following. And in doing that, like, I had some unhappy periods where I wasn't very happy with what I was doing in my life. And I think if I'd have really spent time narrowing down on like, what brings me joy? Why does that bring me joy? What do I really want to look for in my life? I think I'd have created a life that I love sooner. And I'm not unhappy with how things have worked out. I just think using this year to really get to know yourself, you start new hobbies, you try new things, you treat yourself like, you know, what could my life be? What could it be? And you try as much as you can and you really listen to the things that bring you joy. I think that is a beautiful way to kind of spend a gap year. And whether that's through travel or working or whatever you end up doing, making sure that you focus, like, find the things that bring you joy and do more of them. And think about how you can incorporate those into your life. I wish I'd kind of done that a bit more when I was younger instead of like thinking I had to follow this plan, you know? But anyway, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. If you don't follow us already, then please do. It means that more people can find me. And if you know someone that would enjoy this podcast episode, send it their way and they can join our podcast group chat. And finally, last but not least, if you don't already follow me on Instagram or on TikTok, then make sure you follow me at Mel from Bella. The link's in the show notes. I love you. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to speak to you again next week. I love you. Bye. Mwah.